Tonight we're going to do a live protocol in the gallery.
We take the cells, we begin to grow them inside of essentially petri dishes.
Bioteknica is really focused on the intersection between art and science.
We can then put them into what's called a bioreactor, which is in essence an artificial uterus.
We know that human beings have been manipulating life since the beginning of time.
What you're left with is a three-dimensional tissue living sculpture specimen.
It crosses a bold frontier. To alter genes and cells has always been the domain of science. Not anymore.
It's fabulous.
Emotional response might be one of repulsion, you know.
Here in a gallery in Montreal, two Canadians challenge the boundaries between art and science.
Has the monstrous any place in art?
Is it wrong? It smells.
I loved it.
The biotech future is now, and we need to decide now, as individuals and as a society, what direction we want it to go.
It's called bioart. It's like art meets activism in a petri dish, and it's meant to invoke fierce reactions. Sean Bailey and Jennifer Willet are going to the market, but not for groceries.
Still our video. I have the address. The prototype is ready to pick up at 4:30.
They're going to make history tonight. They'll soon be the first Canadians to open a biology lab in an art gallery. They want to pose tough questions.
We are interested in drawing the public's attention to some of these questions and to understanding exactly what is biotechnology, how do these processes work, how do they affect me, how do I feel, how do we feel as a society making these types of decisions.
Okay, we should just be about 5 minutes or so. But we'll be right back out. Thank you.
They're on their way to buy material for their art. And it's not paint or clay that they're looking for. They want to buy something even the butcher's not sure about.
Hello.
Bonjour. We're looking for a thigh bone from a cow. A bone from a cow, like fresh.
It must be very fresh.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My role as an artist is to create works of art that are provocative, that exist in the public sphere, and that challenge the viewer to think critically about these technologies. So I'm quite happy to stand beside work that some people may view as being offensive or immoral or unethical. Is there any way that we could get that bone right there? Yep.
Yeah.
Don't cut that?
Don't cut.
Don't cut.
And
the whole thing.
how old is that? Maybe is it like it was recent? We need the cells from the inside.
It's fresh.
Is it very fresh?
Yeah, it's working today.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
It needs to be fresh. If the cow has been dead for less than 48 hours, the cells inside may still be alive.
I'm a hobbyist, an amateur in tissue culture in this particular field of biology. I have studied some chemistry, I've studied some anatomy. Most of it has not been a formal practice though. My focus has always been on being an artist.
An artist, but working with the tools of biology. And that means manipulating cells, genes, and the tissues of living organisms.
This polymer was then seeded with the P19 cell line as a means of creating a sculpture, a living sculpture of sorts.
Bioteknica is a project that Sean and I have been working on for a number of years. It is really focused on the intersection between art and science and thinking critically and engaging practically in thinking critically about science.
Bailey and Willet have been a couple for 14 years, married for 3. They both teach in the Studio Arts department at Concordia University. But their fascination with science goes back even farther.
Show me some of your past work where your interest and fascination in science reveals itself even in your earlier work.
I wanted to create a series of patients, and I was thinking of medical textbooks and how they, a lot of my own interest in my work, but also as a human being in science and medicine, comes from my experiences in hospitals. As a young child, my mother was quite ill with cancer, and my family and I spent, a good decade of our lives in and out of hospitals with her. And on the one hand, it was very horrific and sad, but on the other hand, it became an intrinsic part of my life.
For 3 years, I was going down to a gross anatomy lab and studying independently while I was doing my Bachelor of Fine Arts from the body, studying human anatomy, doing anatomical drawing. I have a high degree of fascination with these tools. I love looking through the microscope at the cells and watching them and studying them, and I recognize that life is a process where there is birth, there is death, there is eating, there is shitting, there is there is, all of these things. This is all part of the life cycle.
Bailey and Willet learned the secrets of tissue engineering at the University of Western Australia. They spent a year at Bioteknica, the first lab of its kind in the world. There, artists are taught how to use the techniques of biology to make art. Artists have explored the world of science since the days of Leonardo da Vinci. But Bailey and Willet are the first in Canada to use a procedure usually reserved for biology. They call it art.
So let's look now at another surrealist artist who is completely different, Kay Sage.
Art historian Ernestine Dobner says bioartists blur the line between science and art to make their point. They want us to look hard at cloning, reproductive technologies, and genetic engineering.
We should be discussing it. We should be shocked at some of it. And certainly we can look at it as, it's the scientist playing God. Many artists actually play into that. For example, the Critical Art Ensemble created one performance piece that was called The Cult of the New Eve.
In The Cult of the New Eve, American artists' Critical Art Ensemble make wafers and beer with a human gene. Then they offer it to participants of the performance.
So that has sort of a double kind of meaning. First of all, a reference to the religious aspect of science and religion being one. So this is nothing new, but just the idea of presenting this as a sacrament. I'm sure most people would be repelled by the idea of drinking beer that has a DNA in it.
Sean and I do not engage in this notion of a natural order. In fact, we know that human beings have been manipulating life since the beginning of time. The corn that we grow is genetically modified through thousands of years of people harvesting towards specific attributes that they want to acquire. So for us, God doesn't play into it.
This art movement is treated with suspicion.
Mr. Kurtz was detained, his home, his entire block sealed off for 36 hours.
Critical Art Ensemble's co-founder Stephen Kurtz was investigated for bioterrorism in 2004. Police found harmless bacteria and lab equipment for an art project in his home. He ended up being charged with mail and wire fraud and could still go to jail for his art.
With bioart, one has to realize that it is really dealing with very serious issues in what the artist is presenting, perhaps in a very controversial and outlandish way. But certainly, the issues that the artists are raising are extremely important for us.
Eduardo Katz is another controversial artist in this field. With the help of scientists, he inserted a fluorescent gene from a jellyfish into a fertilized rabbit egg. It grew into a rabbit that glows green in the dark. Many were outraged, but he argued that scientists had already done the same. Coming up, from tumor cells to a living sculpture.
We take the cells, we begin to grow them inside of essentially petri dishes. What you're left with is a three-dimensional tissue living sculpture specimen.